Welcome to Lunch with the Lord. I'm Pastor Mark. We're in Judges chapter 19. We're going to be starting in verse 2 this lesson. But before we begin, Jeremiah 15:16, Thy words were found, and I did eat them. And thy word was unto me the joy and the rejoicing of my heart. Now, as we saw last lesson, we're looking at a new section here, chapters 19 to 21, and it deals with moral depravity, from religious apostasy to moral depravity. And we see here that, well, let's read verse 1. And it says here, It came to pass in those days when there was no king in Israel, that there was a certain Levite sojourning in the side of Ephraim, who took to him a concubine out of Bethlehem, Judah. So here, this sojourner, this Levite sojourning in Ephraim, the hill country of Ephraim, and he takes a concubine from Bethlehem, Judah. He has a concubine. Now, she's not a proper wife, but she's a concubine. Now we get into verse 2, and it says here, And his concubine played the whore against him, and went away from him unto her father's house, to Bethlehem, Judah, and she was there for 4 months. Now, it says here she played the whore. All right. Now, you know, my mother, she always told me many times, you learn something new every day, Mark, right? You learn something new every day. And, for 47 years, I believed that this woman actually committed adultery against this Levite. But I want to give you a legitimate alternative to what may have actually happened. Now, I want to look at three reasons why I'm giving you an alternative view of this. Now, the first reason is this. It's the Hebrew word for whore and the Hebrew word for to be angry. Now, these two words, the Hebrew word for whore and the Hebrew word for to be angry, there's the only difference between those two words is 2 Hebrew letters. That's it, 2 Hebrew letters. For example, if you have the word caution and the word cushion, caution and cushion. Again, there's the changing of 2 letters in the word can change the whole meaning of that word. Now, it may be possible that the original Hebrew word was either mistakenly changed or it was deliberately changed. If the original word was changed, then it may have been changed because of the way the translator viewed the relationship between the Levite and his wife. Now, again, it says whoever translated this into from the Hebrew, it's possible that he saw this woman as a legitimate wife and not as a concubine. Now, reason number 2, as I said back in verse 1, a concubine's relationship to her husband was not the same relationship as a proper wife. It is not stated in the Bible anywhere that any concubine committed adultery. Being an adulterer was for a proper wife, not for a concubine. Therefore, either she was a proper wife and she did commit adultery, or she was a concubine and probably she didn't commit adultery. If the transcriber viewed her as a proper wife, then we can understand why he may have changed this Hebrew word. Now, the third reason is this. Her father received her and the Levite, taking her back. What's important about that? Well, if she truly did commit adultery, then according to Deuteronomy 24 and verse 4, it was unlawful for the Levite to take her back. And she probably should, should have been put to death by either her father or by her husband, by the Levite. Now, an argument against this third reason would be that, well, because the children of Israel had strayed so far from God and from his law that the Levite may not have any conviction about taking her back. And she probably knew that her father would receive her back and be happy just to have her back again and not to confront her from her sins. Are those two things possible? Yes. Yeah, it's possible. These may be true. Again, we don't know. None of us were there. Even the scholars that I studied, they weren't there when it happened. So no one really knows. Now, but there are a few scholars who take the view that this woman was angry with her husband for whatever reason, and she decided to leave him and to go home. Maybe because he was a sojourner, she got tired of traveling around with him, and maybe she just wanted to settle down. And three of the 20 different Bible translations that I read on this verse says that they agree that she had an argument with her husband. She basically was fed up with him, and she had enough of it. Whatever he was doing, she had enough, and she got angry and she went home. Now, but when it comes right down to it, again, none of us were really there. So we don't know really what happened. But the reason why I'm presenting this is because of there is a legitimate possibility that maybe she did not commit adultery against her husband. Maybe she was just angry with him. And again, it's just a change. It's just a couple letters change from one Hebrew word, turning it into another Hebrew word. Now, let's read verse 3. And it says, "And her husband arose and went after her, and to speak friendly unto her, and to bring her again, having his servant with him, and a couple of asses. And she brought him into her father's house. And when the father of the damsel saw him, he rejoiced to meet him." Now, it says here, and this is a beautiful portion of Scripture. It says here that he spoke friendly. He spoke friendly. And the Hebrew word for friendly is leb, L-E-B. And it means to speak to the heart. To speak to the heart. This Levite went to her to speak kindly and to speak gently to her, so that his words touched her heart. This same Hebrew word is used in Genesis 34 and verse 3, where Shechem spoke kindly to Dinah's heart. And it's also used in Genesis chapter 50 and verse 21, where Joseph speaks to the hearts of his brothers to not fear any retaliation from him. And also we see it very beautifully in Ruth chapter 2 and verse 13, where Ruth says to Boaz that he spoke friendly. He spoke to her heart. This is great. I mean, he went and he spoke to her heart. Isn't this how our words should be? Our words should be words that reach the heart. and not just the head. Colossians chapter 4 and verse 6 says, let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer every man. You know, the way that he went and talked to his wife may be an indication that it really was that she was angry with him. And this is the reason, possibly, maybe why she left him and why he's going and speaking kindly to. Maybe he abused her. Maybe, I don't know. But he went and he spoke kindly to her. The woman now, she brings this Levite to her father. And her father, well, he's excited to see him. Let's read verse 4. And it says here, and his father-in-law, the damsel's father, retained him, and he abode with him 3 days. So they did eat and drink, and they lodged there. Now, the Hebrew words tell how the father basically grabbed a hold of him and constrained him and begged him and maybe even prevented him from leaving. For 3 days, the father made every provision for the Levite and for his servant. But he would not have been so excited if he knew what was going to happen to his daughter in just a few days because of the Levite. Now let's read verses 5 through 9. And it says here, and it came to pass on the 4th day, when they arose early in the morning, that he arose up to depart. And the damsel's father said to his son-in-law, comfort thine heart with a morsel of bread, and afterward go your way. And they sat down and did eat and drink, both of them together. For the damsel's father said unto the man, be content and pray and tarry all night, and let your heart be merry. And when the man arose up to depart, his father-in-law urged him therefore, and he lodged there again. And he arose early in the morning on the 5th day to depart. And the damsel's father said, comfort your heart, I pray thee. And they tarried until afternoon, and they did eat both of them. And when the man rose up to depart, he and his concubine and his servant, his father-in-law, the damsel's father, said unto him, behold, now the day is drawing toward evening. I pray you, stay here all night. Behold, the day grows to an end. Lodge here, that your heart may be merry. And tomorrow get you early on your way, that you may go home. Now, the Levite ends up staying a total of 5 days with the father at the father's expense. But the sun now, the sun had started its downward course towards sunset. There is still some time before the sun fully sets, and the father encourages the son-in-law to stay another day. But this Levite has had enough hospitality, and he wants to take his wife and leave. Now let's read verse 10. But the man would not tarry that night, but he rose up and departed and came over against Jebus, which is Jerusalem. And there were with him 2 asses saddled. His concubine also was with him. Now the Levite decides that it's time to go. I've been here 5 days and I want to go, and we're leaving. Jebus is basically Jerusalem. And remember, the woman is from Bethlehem, Judah. So this is where they now are. So they're in Bethlehem, Judah, and they're going to go to Jebus. Being that Bethlehem is only about 6 miles from Jerusalem, they could make that trip in just a couple of hours before sundown hits. The donkeys being saddled could mean that they were either ridden part of the way or that they were loaded with provisions for the next few days. Now let's read verses 11 through 14 and we'll finish. And it says here, and when they were by Jebus, which is Jerusalem, the day was far spent. And the servant said unto his master, Come, I pray you, and let us turn into the city of the Jebusites, and lodge in it. And his master said unto him, We will not turn aside into the city of a stranger that is not of the children of Israel. We will pass over to Gibeah. And he said unto his servant, Come, and let us draw near to one of these places to lodge all night, in Gibeah or in Ramah. And they passed on and went their way, and the sun went down upon them when they were by Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin. Now, as they draw close to Jerusalem, the Levite does not want to stay there at Jerusalem because it was either fully or mostly inhabited by Jebusites, which were Gentiles. Therefore, the Levite wants to travel about another 3 or 4 miles northwest of Jerusalem to Gibeah. Now, in verse 13, the last part of verse 13, Ramah is also mentioned, which is still about another 2 or 3 miles north of Gibeah. So, according to chapter 20, verses 4 and 5, the Levites said that they stayed in Gibeah that night. They did not continue. They went past Jerusalem because the Levite didn't want to stay in Jerusalem. They went to Gibeah, and possibly they were going to go to Ramah. But again, the Levite says in Judges 20 verses 4 and 5 that they did stay in Gibeah that night. All right, we're going to continue on in verse 15 next lesson. But until then, walk with the Lord. I know he walks with you.